My biggest limiting belief that was holding me back in my career and maybe personally as well is that I was going to disappoint people, that I was going to let people down, that I would let myself down, that I would let other people down. And what happened in doing that is it really kept me from doing anything. I took a ReLaunch course, I think it's over 4 years ago now, that really made me face what that was holding me back. And it triggered a bunch of emotional things in me that really took me back to my childhood, that took me back to comments that teachers had made to me, maybe even comments that adults had made to me, everything that put this sort of burden on me that for some reason I was responsible for other people not being disappointed. And as soon as I shed that, as soon as I was like, nope, they're adults. They're on their own. I'm not responsible for that. That is when I saw like real growth.
Welcome to Relaunch into a Rich Life, the podcast where breakthrough stories meet unstoppable success. I'm Hilary DeCesare, and each week we dive into the powerful relaunches that turn setbacks into setups for wealth, impact, and true fulfillment. Ready to flip your world and step into your richest life? Let's dive in. Today, we welcome Alison Shunneson, a real estate entrepreneur with a background in history, business, and law. Since starting property investment in 1997, she has grown Rent and Grow Management to oversee 224 apartments, transforming motels into stylish, eco-friendly micro units. Her commitment to affordable, sustainable housing has attracted investors and talent, proving that business can be both profitable and socially responsible. Alison, so good to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Hilary. It's an honor, really.
Oh my gosh, I have been looking forward to this because I have been a witness to your growth. I have been a witness to you being this high-powered attorney and deciding to do something completely different. So I would love to start off when we talk about relaunch into a rich life. There's always those moments that really were the relaunch that kind of pushes you forward into doing something different. Can we go back and talk about what was it for you that made you decide, you know what? I'm not supposed to be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned in the opening, I started doing kind of small remodels of houses before there was such a thing as shows on Fix and Flip. And I was doing like kitchens and bathrooms of really small little bungalow houses here in Denver. And then 2008 hit, and I got stuck with like 3 houses. That was when the bottom kind of fell out of the market. And I ended up turning around and renting the houses. And when that happened, we were in the black every single month on these houses. And I started to really get a picture of what it looked like to annuitize your income. And rather than practicing law where you have like one case and then that's done and that income stream is gone, with rentals, I realized like you can build. You can just build, keep building, and keep getting more and more and more income. And it's sort of just, it's turned a switch in my head. And around that time, I was like, I'm going to start looking for an apartment building. Like, I think this is what I am meant to do. And I've always really been interested in real estate. And I think that as an investment tool, I was always interested in it. And so, yeah, so it fit.
You know, this is super interesting because I know that there's a lot of people that are listening right now that are thinking, I do have this other passion. I like what you did. You didn't just give up on law. You started to go into, starting to see real estate as a potential, maybe it's a separate line of income for you, but it was also this passion project. And I really like, because, there are all those great shows on TV and you were doing it, you were living that probably even a little bit before they even came on. And then it really turned into something bigger. And we talk about luck. We talk about some people being able to have a rich life. First off, I'd love for you to describe in your mind what is relaunching into a rich life and how much of it is luck.
Yeah, that is so. I was never a big believer in luck. Like I always thought that like you cultivated in your life opportunities. And I saw luck as more of like opportunities that you could see. And then as I look kind of back on my life a little bit more, I find myself a little bit more like, wow, that was lucky that that happened. Like for example, I'd be driving through a neighborhood and see like a restaurant that I knew of and that was good, and it was be in this new opening in this new neighborhood, and I would be in that neighborhood for like with one of my kids for like a sports like a game or something like that, and then I'd end up buying an apartment building in that neighborhood, and I thought to myself that was so lucky that I saw that, and I realize that I do think it's a combination. I do think it's a combination of putting yourself out there and being lucky in what you find and also being open. I think like a real like switch flips in you when you're open to opportunity. When you look at something you say, I wonder why that restaurant is going into this neighborhood. What's happening in this neighborhood? And being curious enough to like look into it and to like
Mm.
follow your intuition or wherever your mind is leading you. And those things were really a turning point for me in this.
You know what I like to really think about is how your brain is wired, right? And so is it luck or is it that you knew what you were looking for? You had clarity. You were like laser focused on here's what I'm looking for. And then in your brain, there's something called the RAS, the reticular activation system, that then when you tell it, hey, I'm getting clarity. I need to see this. I need to find this. I want to bring this into my world. All of a sudden, that's what it is designed to do, bring opportunities to you. So it may have been, if you hadn't had that so specific, that restaurant, what's going on there? If you hadn't, you wouldn't have noticed it. Because remember, there's so much going on around us, but you being able to say, clarity, I want to be able to do this. I want to find hey, I want to now find a motel that I can refurbish, that I can be able to develop, and then luck, randomness of it happened, or your brain is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. So, yeah, that was so good. I love that story. So, what is relaunch? When you think about into a rich life, what's a rich life for Alison Shunneson?
Oh, I think my rich life has a lot of balance in it. It's not it is of course making more money, which has happened sort of naturally with the growth of the business and the start of the private equity fund that changed my life financially. But I've been married for over 25 years now, and I think cultivating that relationship, I have children, cultivating those relationships, friends also finding, reuniting with some old friends, and also keeping a very strong group of really good women friends who are also entrepreneurs around me has made my life rich. And it every day, you wake up with a positive attitude about what is going to possibly happen that day. That is a rich life.
So, knowing your story, I know that there was a time that you had to overcome limiting beliefs, the beliefs that are very opposite than the empowering ones that we love to
Yeah.
focus in on, the hard ones, the ones that hold us back from success. And I do want to get into your fund, the equity fund, and building this up and building your business. But first, I want to talk about what was holding you back with a limiting belief, and how did you uncover it, and what did you do about it?
My biggest limiting belief that was holding me back in my career and maybe personally as well is that I was like I was going to disappoint people, that I was going to let people down, that I would let myself down, that I would let other people down. And what happened in doing that is it really like kept me from doing anything, because even though I was practicing law and law was a very safe place for somebody, right? It's you really there's like instructions. There is like, there's precedent, there's things that you follow, and that was very comforting for that Alison at that time. So to step outside of that, and honestly, Hilary, I took your course. I took a ReLaunch course. I think it's over 4 years ago now. That really made me face what that was holding me back. And it triggered a bunch of emotional things in me that really took me back to my childhood, that took me back to, comments that teachers had made to me, maybe even comments that adults had made to me, everything that put this sort of burden on me that for some reason I was responsible for other people not being disappointed. And it was, and as soon as I shed that, as soon as I was like, nope, they're adults. They're on their own. Like, I'm not responsible for that. That is when I saw like real growth.
So it's interesting because when you did start to come into the program, you've always been successful, but you were kind of plateauing at that 6-figure kind of lower, but you had these lofty goals, and you really, and it's work. When you start to think about the belief blaster, which is what you're referring to, taking your limiting belief through it. It was a limiting belief. You heard her say all the way back to childhood, right? So, let's say Allie's mid 50s. She's been carrying this since she was 5 or 6. We're talking 50 years. And it doesn't just happen overnight that you get rid of it or blast it, as I say. But there was something about you, and I really want to get to this. You knew you had to do it. You knew that it was potentially holding you back from getting to that next level of success. But it was hard. It was tough. It was gut-wrenching, but you kept going. Why do you think you kept going? What was it about it?
My grandmother lived until she was 100 years old. And I was very close to her, and she didn't do anything. she didn't really do anything that she wanted to do.
Okay. I was thinking she didn't do anything, and then you're like, anything she wanted to do. Okay.
She didn't. She had, she was this like really impressive person who I think like held herself back in a lot of ways. And a lot of that came from fears that she had. And I think it just was a lesson to me. I think I just was, like you said, I'm 55 years old now. I think I just was like, and at the time when I was taking your class, I think, turned 51, and I was like, it's like now or never. What am I just gonna stay here like this, or am I gonna progress in my life? Am I gonna move on? And I think you have to like be ready for that. I think that you have to. So I think at that moment maybe of losing her and kind of taking stock of her life and then taking stock of mine, I just realized that I had to go for it. That it just, I had to do whatever I had to do to get beyond whatever those hurdles were that were in front of me, and just push myself and do it.
So Alison, when did you actually start your real estate business, where you went in and you were like, I'm going to start to get apartment buildings?
Yeah, so it took a long time. So I was practicing law until 2017. So I started back in the late 90s. And then I told you like 2008, things were rough, but it really took me until I think I bought my first apartment building in 2014. And then I didn't even stop practicing law until 2017 because I was not, I wanted to make sure that I was going to make a transition, that wouldn't hurt my family, that I was comfortable with. I mean, I am a risk taker, but I'm a risk taker in a very kind of control as much. I try to control as much of the environment as I possibly can so that I make a good choice, so that I make good decisions, sound decisions.
So what's interesting is you were 48 years old and you're like, all right, I'm doing this. This is, to some people wouldn't be thinking, let me make such a big drastic change in my career. But you were like, I'm now going to do it. What do you think, in order to make that decision, what type of like core values, what are you leaning into to really go to that place to say, you know what, as you know, now or never, go time. But what was coming up for you?
I think that I think as far as a core value that professionally, I wanted to be successful. I really, really, really
But
wanted
you
it.
were successful as an attorney. Now you're like, I want to be successful in this totally different, non-relatable career.
Yeah, because I thought that I could go further. So law is interesting. Law is interesting as a career because especially if you're a woman, there are like tracks that you kind of get on. And if you have children and you decide to stay home with your children, which I did, and only work part-time, you're not going to be a partner at a law firm, or I shouldn't say that, but the odds are much lower. And that is where you start to really accumulate wealth, when you really start to put yourself in a position. And so I sort of saw that there was like a ceiling for me practicing law. And I thought, and I saw with real estate that there wasn't a ceiling, that I could take it as far as I wanted to take it. And I just jumped on the opportunity. And although I loved practicing law, I honestly have never looked back, and I haven't missed it for 1 second.
See, this is what I need people to really lean into. Hear what Alison just said. You sometimes just, you have to trust what's going on inside you. I call it the wise woman, right? You got to trust that wise woman, the intuition of like, this is what I need to be doing. You looked at it, but you looked at it from two different perspectives. You looked at it from your head and your heart. And what was my career going to be like in this pathway? What was it going to look like in this other? So you've gotten rid of the limiting belief and you continued to kind of create this monopoly in your business. Can you share with us, because I have literally seen the growth in the last 4 years go from, again, that Alison playing a little bit smaller, being blocked by her limiting beliefs, to, I mean, the world is your oyster and it is just opening up. How are you doing these days? And what is next for you?
So my biggest hurdle was actually I jumped over last year, which was I started my own private equity fund. And I ended up raising $6.4 million for that fund to make a multifamily real estate investment. And I see that avenue as my future, just running that fund and managing it and seeing what's involved. I realize that is, I love it. I love acquisition. And so this year, my goal is to double that fund. So to do another fundraise and to find another property that fits within our core values and what the company is all about, and to do another and to move on and just keep building the number of units that we have and to keep providing good quality low income housing, which has always been really the driving force behind what I do and what I care about.
Why is that?
Because when I was practicing law, I had done some pro bono work, some work for free, and I was exposed to how people were living. And I noticed right away that a huge portion of our immigrant population was living in really substandard housing. And it bothered me. It bothered me that people worked so hard to get to our country. And then once they got here, what they had to live in was not good. It really wasn't. It was, bug infested, and appliances that don't work, and not sometimes a toilet that doesn't work. I mean, the list goes on. And broken tile. I mean, threadbare carpet. So I thought that we could do better. I thought that I could do better for people, and that it does reach into a core value of fairness, which I think it was a core value of mine when I practiced law. And I think I carried that into my real estate also, that things should be fair, and that was not fair, and what we could do something about it. And so that's what I set out to do. And that's
doing it,
what the
and you're
company's.
crushing it.
Yes.
And now you're going to have another fund that you're going to be putting out there. Where do you think this will end up growing into? Like what is that ultimate think big? Scazy is what I call it. Scary and crazy. That, like, oh my God. What would that, if you really think about that rich life of being able to have it all, what would that be for Alison?
I think that I see no really clear end to the business. I see it just growing and growing. I see it becoming a much larger company than it is now. I see being able to touch, not just thousands of people, but hundreds of thousands of people, and change their life. Give people like a home that's worth like launching the rest of their life from. It's hard to grow the rest of your life for other people, to build the rest of their lives, if you don't have a good home base, if that isn't something. So I see no end to the business. I really don't. I mean, a long time ago, I was like, oh, I just want to get to 1,000 apartments. Like, if I just get to 1,000 apartments, like that'll be the end. But now, like this year, I was like, well, gosh, I could easily do that. I mean, now I'm looking at buildings that are like 250, 300 apartments. So that's going to come pretty quickly here. And, I don't know, Hilary. Well, you'll have to stay tuned, and we'll see where it is.
So awesome. Well, Alison Shunneson, thank you so much for being on this episode of Relaunch into a Rich Life. And thanks everyone for tuning in to Relaunch into a Rich Life. And in today's episode, if it sparks something inside of you, don't keep it in to yourself. Don't just hoard it. Give it to somebody, share it, subscribe, and let's create unstoppable momentum together. Until next time, keep relaunching, keep rising, and remember, it's go time.